Chapter 11. Book. I started to make some furniture. I needed a chair and a table. I used the wood from my rafts and the ship. It took me 5 days to make a chair and a table. Next, I made shelves inside the cave. I put my tools on the shelves. I put my clothes and guns in the cave too. My guns were on the walls too. I was very pleased when my work was finished. Everything was well organized. I could easily find what I needed. I decided to write a book about my life on the island. I described my days in the book. I started with my first day on the island. I wrote everything what I remembered. I also wrote what I thought. It was good for me when I put my thoughts on paper. I wrote 1 page every day at the beginning. But when I got to the present, I wrote only 1 page every week. I wrote only important events. After some time, my days on the island started to be similar, but they were never boring. I had always something to do. Every morning I walked for a few hours. Then I worked until noon. I had lunch. Then I slept after lunch for 2 hours. Then I continued my work until the evening. I made my cave bigger with the tools which I had. I wanted to have a big cave. The cave was my kitchen, living room, cellar, and sometimes a bedroom all in one. When the cave was almost done, a lot of earth fell down from one side. I wasn't in the cave when it had happened. I was lucky. If a lot of earth fell on me, I could die. First, I had to clean the cave. Then I decided to put long boards on the sides and also on the ceiling. I didn't want the accident to happen again. This work took about 1 week. In December, I continued to work in my small camp. The weather wasn't very good for 20 days. It rained day and night, but it was still warm. So I worked inside. It was never cold on the island. It was good for me. At the end of December, I killed a goat. I also hurt another goat. Its leg was broken. The goat couldn't walk. I took the goat home. I looked after it. After 2 weeks, the goat wasn't scared. It could eat from my hand. I started to think about keeping animals. I could have food when my gunpowder was finished. In January, I traveled through the island. I found more goats in the center of the island. The animals were very shy. It was difficult to get close to the goats. I wanted to try to domesticate some goats. I only needed an opportunity to do it. I had a plan. I returned it with my dog the next day. He was my hunting partner. I told my dog, "Sit down, wait, don't move." Then I went around the goats, but in a big distance. Chapter 12. Corn. When the goats were between me and my dog, I hid behind a tree. Then I shouted at my dog, "Come here." He started to run to me and the goats too. I stayed in my position behind the tree. When one of the goats was close to me, I jumped and cuffed its leg. But when the goat kicked me with its second leg in my nose, it hurt a lot. I let the goat go and the goat was soon gone. We weren't successful. This wasn't a good way to catch a goat. We had to do it differently. I told my dog, "Let's go home. I need some rest." I worked on my fence from January to March. It took me a long time because I wanted to make it very strong. During this time, I found pigeons on the island. Their homes weren't in the trees. They lived in holes which were in the rocks. It was easy to catch them. Their meat was great. I could also cook and eat their eggs. When I worked on my fence, I found a small bag. I remembered corn in the bag. But now there were only some leaves and dust in the bag. I took the bag outside my camp. I emptied the bag because I needed it for the gunpowder. This happened shortly before the rains. A month later, I found a few green leaves in that place. It was young corn. Words couldn't express how happy I was. I had corn on the island. It was fantastic. I could bake bread in the future. Something happened on March 16th. I was inside my cave when pieces of earth started to fall from the ceiling. I was scared. I didn't want my work to be destroyed. I ran outside the cave. I noticed that the ground started to shake everywhere. It was an earthquake. I was shocked and scared. Some big stones fell from the hill, but I was lucky. They didn't hit my tent. The earthquake was finished soon, but I was afraid to go inside. I sat on the ground in front of my tent. I started to think maybe it was better not to sleep in the cave. It wasn't very safe in case another earthquake came, but I didn't want to sleep in the tent, so I decided to make a house instead of the tent. I wanted to use the cave only as a cellar. The next day, I started to build the house. It was in April. It took me 3 months to build the house, but I was happy with my new home. I was ill in the last week of July. I had a temperature. I couldn't get out of the bed. I was very vague. I could do nothing in that state. I had crazy dreams. The dreams weren't very logical, but for me, they were real when I had these dreams. Chapter 13. Dream. One of my dreams was really crazy. I was in a pub. The pub was on my island. I wanted to drink some rum, but the waitress was very lazy. She sat at the bar. She did nothing. I didn't like it. I was angry, but I waited. Then my wife came to the pub. She gave me a piece of paper with some text. It was a message from her father. He wrote, "Come home. You have to work on the plantations." But I didn't want to go home. I went to the kitchen in the pub. There was my mother in the kitchen. She prepared some steaks. She also cooked soup. I tasted the soup. It tasted fantastic. Then 2 Englishmen came to the pub. They wanted to sell gunpowder. One man looked like a gentleman, but the second man was horrible. I told the horrible man, "I'm sorry. I don't need your gunpowder. I have a lot of gunpowder in my camp." "What did you say?" said the horrible man. "Our gunpowder isn't good for you. This is the reason why we are here. We traveled from London. You have to buy our gunpowder." I said, "Thank you. I don't want your gunpowder." The man was really angry. Our conversation wasn't good. He said some horrible things about me. I said some horrible things about him. The conversation got to a point when he wanted to kill me. He took his gun. I started to run away. He shot at me. Then I woke up. 1 week later, I felt better, but I still needed to relax. I needed to sleep a lot. In August, I was okay again. I still felt a little weak. I knew that I needed to do some physical exercise. The next 10 days, I walked around the island. This exercise made me feel better. When I felt strong again, I decided to explore the whole island. I found a new interesting part of the island. It was a valley with a lake. The valley was in the central part of the island. I found melons and grapes there. The melons were very sweet. There were also apples, oranges, and lemons in this valley. I wanted to take some fruit home, but I needed a big bag. I didn't have a big bag with me. I collected some fruit. I put the fruit in one place. I returned to my cave. I took a bag for the fruit. When I was back, I saw that my fruit was destroyed. Some fruit was eaten. Some fruit was broken. I thought that some wild animals ate the fruit. Still, I liked the fruit valley. The nature was beautiful there. I wanted to live there. I thought I can move here, but the beach is far from this place. I have to be close to the beach because I need to see a ship which can save me. Chapter 14. House. I didn't move to the fruit valley, but I decided to build another house there. I started to visit the valley more often. Step by step, I was building a house there. The house was small. There was a double fence around it. The house was protected like a castle. Again, I used a ladder to go in and out, but I had also stairs on the inside of the fence. I used stairs on the inside and I used ladder on the outside. This activity took me the whole of August and the beginning of September, but I enjoyed it a lot. The fruit valley gave me so much energy. I felt so healthy and strong there. Sometimes, when I was in the valley at night, I watched the moon and the stars. I thought about my wife. I thought about my family in England. I knew that they could see the same moon. They could see the same stars, but we couldn't be together. I thought about my family very often. I wished the best for them. I also thought about all the people who could see the moon. I imagined the places where they lived. I felt connected with all the people. Sometimes I felt connected with the whole universe. I also thought about God. I had some questions for God. I asked him, why am I on this island? What is the reason for it? Why am I still alive when my friends are dead? I didn't have answers to many of these questions, but I trusted God. I believed that He knew what He was doing. Then the rainy season started. The rainy season continued until the middle of October. This was my first year on the island. When the rains ended, I returned to my valley house. I saw that the fence was all green. New leaves were growing everywhere. This wasn't only beautiful. It was also useful because my house was hidden. It was really hard to see the house. The leaves created shadow. It was very nice to stay there. I decided to make a fence from the same wood around my first house too. When the rainy season was finished, I put my corn seeds into the ground. I was afraid that something bad could happen. I only used a half of the seeds. This was a good idea because, unfortunately, none of these seeds grew up. I put the second half of the seeds into the ground before the next rainy season. This time, they grew up all right. I could say that I had a little farm on the island. I could see that the seasons on the island were different from England. There were no spring, summer, autumn and winter on the island, but there were 2 rainy and 2 dry seasons. With this information, I could now plan when to put seeds into the ground. Chapter 15. Basket. I started to make longer and longer trips around the island. Soon, I realized that I needed a basket for these trips. With a basket, I could carry more food when I made my trips around the island. I could also carry more fruit from the fruit valley. I cut branches from the same tree which I used for my fences. I dried these branches. I used the branches to make the basket. When I finished the basket, I decided to make a longer trip around the island. I went through the valley with my second house. After the valley, I found some grass fields. They were very flat. They had a lot of flowers. They smelled so good. A lot of insects were flying around these flowers. I saw some big butterflies. Their wings were 10 centimeters wide. There were small trees around these fields. I found nuts on these trees. These nuts were different from nuts in England. They had a different shape. They were also sweeter than nuts in England. I also discovered some new animals on this side of the island. There were many parrots, rabbits, and grey cats there. I even caught one parrot. I took the parrot with me. There were many colors on his body. I saw red, green, purple, orange, blue, pink, and yellow. There were also a lot of turtles and other birds there. This part of the island was nicer. There was more food in this part, but I didn't want to move. My dog caught a young goat on the way back. I saved the goat. I took the goat with me. I wanted to keep goats. Now I had another chance. I left the goat in my valley home. First, I wanted to prepare some space for the goat in my first home. I was so tired from the trip that I was relaxing the whole day. I made a cage for the parrot. I brought home the goat. The goat started to calm down. I made a map of the whole island. I put these newly discovered places on the map. The time went very quickly. Soon it was September again. This was my second year on the island. I wasn't sad as in the beginning. I accepted my situation. I was happy with what I had. My days were similar. I hunted in the morning. I cooked at noon. I was relaxing in the afternoon, when the sun was the strongest, and I worked in the evening. This was my typical day. I also taught the parrot to say his name. His name was Paul. My cornfields kept me busy in November and December. The wild goats and rabbits were eating the little plants. I didn't want to lose my corn, so I quickly made a fence around the area with the seeds. I made a gate which I could open quickly in the fence. I put my dog inside the fence. He protected my corn at night. Soon the plants were tall, but another danger came. birds started to eat the seeds. I shot some and I was watching my corn until all the birds were gone. Chapter 16. Bread. I had my first corn at the end of December. It wasn't a lot of corn. I didn't want to eat the corn. I decided to keep all the seeds. My goal was to put the seeds in the ground again and have more corn later. I thought I will need some pots for the seeds. I will look for clay around the island. I found some clay. I tried to make a pot. I had no success at the beginning. People in England made beautiful pots, but I didn't know the whole process well enough to be able to make pots. However, I tried again and again. It was a long process, but after 2 months of experimenting and trying, I made 2 large pots. I put the pots into round baskets. I put dry grass between the baskets and the pots. The dry grass and the baskets protected the pots very well. I continued to make small pots. Their quality improved. I also made long but not very high pots. I put sea water in these pots. When the water was gone, I had salt. One day, I found a broken piece of one pot in the fire. The fire made the piece as hard as stone, and it was very red too. This gave me a good idea. I took one pot and made a fire around the pot. The pot was very hard after a few hours. I was happy with the result. I thought I will also need a tool to make flour from seeds. I took a big piece of hard wood for that. I made a hole in the wood. Then I took another piece of hard wood and I broke the seeds in this hole with the wood. The flour stayed on the bottom of the hole. I thought I will need something to bake bread. I had an idea. I mixed the flour with water. Then I took 2 stones. I put the stones near the fire. When they were very hot, I put the bread between the stones. This was how I made my first bread on the island. It was during my 3rd year on the island. The bread wasn't perfect, but I liked it a lot. It was my first bread after a long time. I thought about traveling around the island. By sea, I thought that it was possible to make a canoe from a big tree. I found one big tree. I cut the tree and I started to make a hole in it. One day, when I was working on the canoe, I realized that I didn't know how to move it from the forest to the beach. I tried everything to move the canoe. I even thought about digging a channel, but it was all useless. There was a hill between the forest and the beach. I was really sad that I had to leave the canoe in the forest. Many days of work were lost. I didn't believe that I could make such a mistake. I had to plan my work better next time. Chapter 17. CANOE. During my 4th year on the island, my clothes were already very old. I started to use the skins of the animals. I made a cap and other clothes from the skins. They kept me cool in the strong sun, and they protected me from the heavy rain. But the clothes weren't enough. I also needed an umbrella. It took me some time to make the umbrella, but I was successful in the end. I was quite happy with my life on the island. I had everything what I needed for my life on the island. My life on the island continued for the next 5 years. During this time, I decided to make a new canoe. The canoe was smaller and it was easier to move. I wanted to travel around the island in it. When the canoe was finished, I put food, water, and tools in it. I was ready for the trip. I wanted to test if I could go around the island in my canoe. The trip started during my 6th year on the island on the 6th of June. The beginning of my trip wasn't easy for me. I was in danger when my journey started. I had to go around some rocks in the sea. When I wanted to go back to the coast, I realized that there was a strong current. The current was taking me away from the island. The situation was horrible. I was scared. I thought I will die in the open sea. I didn't have enough food and water for a long journey. I fought very hard against the current for 2 hours. Finally, I managed to get close to my island. I could continue my trip around the island. Now I knew that I was stronger than the currents around the island. It made me feel good. Soon I found a small river which went further inside the island. But I got nowhere because soon the river was very narrow. Stones blocked the way. I couldn't continue. I got off my canoe. I went to explore this part of the island. It wasn't far from the part of the island which I knew. I even found the way to my house in the valley. I was so tired from the trip that I fell asleep. I was woken up by a voice. The voice was saying my name. Robinson, where are you? Robinson, where are you? First, I was scared, but then I saw my parrot, Paul, on top of the fence. He knew this sentence from me, and he was saying it with the same intonation as me. I was surprised to see him here. I thought, why wasn't he at home? Still, I was happy to hear somebody talk to me. I left the canoe where it was and I returned home with the parrot. I didn't make another such trip for a year. I stayed in my house most of the time. I kept making tools and pots. I was better at making baskets. Chapter 18. Food. It was 11 years since my first moment on the island. One day I noticed that I didn't have much gunpowder. It started to worry me. I needed gunpowder to kill animals. My first goat was very old. It was too late to try to find a male for her. I wanted meat, but I didn't have the heart to kill her. One day, she died a natural death. I thought with less and less gunpowder, I will have to find another way to get meat. I will make some trap. Tomorrow, I will start to make the trap. I wasn't successful at the beginning, but then I caught 3 young goats. They were 1 male and 2 females. I took the goats home with me. I kept the goats inside a small area with a fence around it. But it was too small for 3 goats. I made a fence for them around a big area. It took me 3 months to build this fence, but the area was very nice. There was a lot of grass and water for them. After some time, the young goats were very calm. Soon they ate out of my hand. In 2 years, I had 12 goats inside my fence. and in 3 years I had more than 20 goats. I had a lot of milk and meat thanks to this. I experimented a few times and I was able to make cheese and butter. My table was full now and I had a lot of animals around me. I had my old dog, goats, and Paul, my parrot. The only thing which I still missed was somebody for a conversation. One day I went to the part of the sea where the strong current was. On the way there, I thought about how strange I looked. I had a big hat, a short jacket, and short trousers. They were all made from animal skin. I didn't have socks or shoes, but I put some goat skins around my feet. I had 2 belts. One belt was for the gun and knife, and one belt for the gunpowder. I also carried a basket on my back and an umbrella above my head. My beard was very long. I realized that life on the island made me a different person. One day I was walking on the beach. I was going to check my canoe. Then I saw something surprising. I saw a mark of a human foot on the sand. I looked around, but I didn't see anybody. I was scared. I ran back to my house. I was so scared that it was difficult to sleep at night. I started to think maybe it was all just my imagination, or maybe it was the mark of my own foot and it was stupid to be scared. This thought made me feel better. I left my house and I went to see the mark in the sand again. Chapter 19. Cannibals. When I came to the mark of the foot, I saw that it was much bigger than the size of my foot. It was impossible that it was my foot. I was scared again. I started to panic. I thought, I will destroy my corn fields and my valley house. I have to hide my activity on the island. I was so afraid that I couldn't sleep the whole night. I finally slept a little in the morning. My head was clear when I woke up. Now, it wasn't so strange that people lived on the islands around. I thought maybe it was their first visit here. Maybe they won't come again. I felt better after these thoughts, but still I wanted to be safe. During the following month, I made another fence around my house and I made holes in the fence through which I could easily fire guns if I was attacked. Now I had a house which was very well protected. Nobody could come easily near me. I also worried about my goats. I divided the animals into 2 groups. I built a smaller fence in another part of the island. I put one group of the goats there. It took me a lot of time, but my animals were safe. It was the 16th year of my life on the island when something very sad happened. My dog died. I was crying for 3 days. I went to my goats and I told them how sad I was. They didn't understand my words, but I felt that they understood me. They felt my emotions. They were unusually calm and quiet. It was now 2 years after the foot in the sand on the beach. One day, when I was walking on the beach, I thought that I saw a canoe far in the sea. I wasn't sure, so I just continued my walk. Then I saw a thing which shocked me. The beach was full of parts of human bodies. Heads, hands, feet, fingers, and teeth were everywhere. There was a black place after a fire. I was angry and scared at the same time. They were here again, I thought. I couldn't look at this horrible scene for a long time. I had a horrible feeling in my stomach. I went back home and I thought about what to do. I decided not to go out to sea with my canoe because I had no chance against a group of cannibals in the open sea. I also decided not to use guns because the sound of a gun was very loud. But I always had guns with me for protection. I started to think that maybe in the future I could kill some of the cannibals and save their prisoners. I started to look for a place near the beach where I could hide and prepare for the attack. Then I changed my opinion. I thought that it wasn't reasonable to fight the cannibals. I didn't know these people, they didn't attack me. Maybe it wasn't good to attack them. Finally, I stopped the preparations and I decided to act only if they attacked me first. Chapter 20. Cave. I was hiding my activity on the island as much as possible. I was very careful. I tried not to be loud. I was worried when I made a fire, but I needed fire because I needed to cook. So, when I made a fire, I tried to make as little smoke as possible. Smoke could go very high and it could be seen from a distance. Once I discovered a small cave in the forest near the beach. I went inside, but when my eyes were okay with the dark, I saw two eyes which were looking at me. I jumped outside. I was scared to death. I waited, but nothing happened. I went slowly to the beginning of the cave, and I listened. I heard something. It sounded as if there was somebody injured inside. I took my gun and entered the cave slowly. When my eyes could see again, I discovered an old goat. It was dying in the cave. I returned to the cave the next day. I found that the goat was dead. I looked around the place and I saw that it was very safe. I thought it will be a good place near the beach where I could hide. So I brought some of my guns and some gunpowder there. It was 23 years since my first moment on this island. I was living comfortably now and I had many animals around me. Paul was repeating my name and some other words were nicely. I had 2 more parrots and I taught the parrots to say my name. I had more than 30 goats. It was the last month of my 23rd year on the island. I was walking to my fields early one morning when I saw fire on the beach. I immediately returned to my house and I prepared all my guns. I took my telescope and I went close to the beach. I hid myself and watched what was happening on the beach. I saw 9 naked people. They had 2 canoes. It looked like that they were waiting for the high tide. When they left, I went to the beach. The beach was full of blood and bones again. This made me angry. I will kill as many of the cannibals as possible next time when I see them, I thought, but they didn't return for a long time. One day in the evening after a big storm, something happened which disturbed me. I heard the sound of a gun at sea. I got out of my house and I saw a light which was coming from the sea. A second shot followed. I thought that it was coming from a ship in danger which was asking for help. I took a lot of dry wood and I ran to the beach where I made a big fire. They probably saw the fire because they fired again. I thought I will speak to somebody tonight. This is great. I kept the fire until midnight, but nobody came to my beach. It was strange. It was something what I couldn't understand. Maybe in the morning I will know more, I thought.